My name is Abigail Kolhman, and I never imagined my own husband would build his career on a lie about our son. For years, he stood on stages, smiling for cameras, letting the world believe I'd betrayed him, all while hiding the truth that could end him. But now you'll see exactly how I took back my story and made sure his biggest night became his public downfall. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. The ballroom smelled of champagne and ambition. Gold light glinted off crystal chandeliers, cameras blinked in the shadows, and the air buzzed with polite laughter. Daniel stood at the podium, tuxedo flawless, smile weaponized. His voice carried through the microphone, smooth, practiced, dripping with the kind of charm that had bought him influence in every corner of Chicago's elite. He was accepting the Lawyer of the Year award, the crowning jewel in a career built on calculated wins. And tonight, he believed, would cement his reputation as not just a brilliant attorney, but a devoted husband and father. He had no idea the speech he'd rehearsed in the mirror all week was about to be drowned out by the truth. From my table 3 rows from the front, I felt my pulse in my fingertips. Ethan sat beside me, swinging his legs under the chair, oblivious. The boy he paraded in campaign brochures, the boy he called my pride and joy at every fundraiser, and the boy whose very existence Daniel had turned into a weapon against me, the flash drive in my clutch pressed against my palm like a trigger. I glanced toward the AV booth at the side of the stage, where Nate, the technician I'd paid in cash, stood waiting for my signal. Daniel was talking about family values now, about overcoming challenges together. Bye. The applause was scattered but approving. I could see his reflection in the projection screen behind him, tall, commanding, untouchable. For now, the mayor was here, 3 judges, 2 of his biggest political donors, and at least a dozen journalists with their phones raised, capturing every word, every smile. Perfect. My phone buzzed in my lap. Ready when you are. I let my gaze rest on Daniel. He lifted his glass toward me, all for show, before turning back to his audience. I returned the gesture with the faintest smile, not the one he knew, but the one I'd been saving for this exact second. A slow breath. A tiny nod toward the AV booth. The house lights dimmed, the screen flickered, and the image of Daniel's beaming headshot dissolved into the grainy scan of a medical document. Gasps erupted around the room. At the top, in bold black letters, "Confidential, Fertility Diagnostic Report." Beneath it, Daniel's name, the date, and a single line in red, underlined twice, "0 viable sperm count." I watched the blood drain from his face, his hand gripping the edge of the podium. The audience noise shifted, murmurs growing sharper, the sound of chairs creaking as people leaned forward to see more. And then the video began to load. The first frame froze on screen, Daniel's profile in shadow, his voice about to fill the speakers. I leaned back in my chair, my heart steady now. Showtime. Before everything unraveled, my life looked perfect from the outside. Daniel and I lived in a restored brownstone on Astor Street. 3 stories of glass and brick with crown molding so intricate it could have been carved by angels. I taught part-time art history at a small private college, spent weekends walking along Lake Michigan with Ethan, and hosted the kind of dinner parties where the wine flowed in crystal decanters and the conversation always found its way to politics. Daniel thrived in those settings. He'd glide through the room in tailored suits, shaking hands, remembering everyone's names, making each guest feel like they were the most important person there. He had a talent for it, that lawyer's gift for performance. But with me in private, he could drop the mask. Or at least, I thought he did. We met when I was 26 and he was 32, fresh off a high-profile court victory that had made him a darling of Chicago's legal scene. I'd been covering an exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art for a freelance column, and he'd been dragged there by a client who loved modern installations. He'd found me staring at a massive abstract canvas, a swirl of red and black, and told me it reminded him of closing arguments. "Both require a little mystery," he'd said. I'd laughed. He'd smiled like he'd just won his first case. For years, he made me believe we were a team. We weathered the heartbreak of failed pregnancies together. At least, I thought we did. I remember the night we sat on the floor of our bedroom, the infertility report between us like a third presence. He'd stared at it for a long time, then looked at me and said, "If we want a child, we'll find a way. No shame in how we get there." That's when we agreed on the sperm donor. We didn't tell anyone, not our parents, not our closest friends. It was ours, our choice, our private truth. When Ethan was born, Daniel seemed transformed. He'd hold him for hours, rocking him while reading legal briefs in a soft, rhythmic voice. He'd kiss the top of my head and say, "We did this. We built this." And I believed him. Our life settled into a rhythm. Daniel's career soared. Court wins, TV appearances, a growing network of political allies. My world revolved around Ethan and my work at the college. In the evenings, we'd have dinner together, though Daniel was often late, claiming depositions had run over or last-minute calls had come in from clients. I didn't question it much. That was the cost of his career, and we were still connected enough to weather it. Looking back, the cracks were there. He had a way of steering conversations so that he always came out looking like the noble one, the selfless provider. If someone complimented me at a party, he'd smile and add, "She's been amazing, especially after what we went through." At the time, I thought it was his way of acknowledging our journey to parenthood. Now I know it was planting a seed, vague enough to stir curiosity, pointed enough to imply a story he could control. The first time I saw the shadow of something darker was at a charity dinner. Ethan was 4, wearing a tiny blazer Daniel had picked out. A colleague of Daniel's bent down to shake Ethan's hand and said, "You've got your father's eyes." Daniel chuckled, but it wasn't the warm laugh I knew. It was tight, almost forced. Later, in the car, he said, "Don't you think it's a little strange when people assume things that aren't true?" I remember frowning, confused. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," he said quickly, his hand tightening on the steering wheel. "Just, people see what they want to see." It passed so quickly that I let it go. But the way he'd said it, like there was a private joke I wasn't in on, lodged somewhere deep in my mind. Life moved forward. Daniel's reputation grew, and with it, our social obligations. He started attending more events without me, saying it was better for appearances if he didn't always bring family. When he was home, he was attentive, charming, almost too perfect. I told myself we were lucky, that some marriages strained under career pressure, but ours was resilient. The red flag came one afternoon when I stopped by his office unannounced. I'd been in the area and thought I'd surprise him with lunch. His secretary hesitated before buzzing me in. Daniel was on the phone, pacing by the window, his voice low and deliberate. "I'm not worried," he was saying. "If it ever comes up, I'll make sure the story benefits me." He saw me in the doorway, ended the call abruptly, and smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe. What's this? Lunch?" I laughed it off, sat down, and unpacked the food. But that sentence stayed with me, like he was already rehearsing a defense for something I didn't yet know he'd done. At the time, I didn't realize that was the first time I'd heard the architecture of his lie taking shape. It happened on a Thursday night in February, the kind of bitter Chicago cold that freezes the inside of your lungs. Daniel was supposed to be at a late client dinner, so I'd put Ethan to bed early and curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and a grating stack of midterm essays. The call came just after 9. It was Julia, an old friend from my teaching days, someone I hadn't heard from in months. Her voice was shaky, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she should even be talking to me. "Abby, I just need to ask you something, and I'm sorry if it's out of line." "Of course," I said, setting down my pen. "I'm at this fundraiser downtown, and Daniel's here. He's working the room, doing his thing. But, he just gave this speech, and..." She hesitated. "He said something that... I don't know how to say this without sounding awful." A strange pressure built in my chest. "Say it." He was talking about how he's always believed in second chances. And then he He told the room about how you made a mistake years ago, how you both worked through it for Ethan's sake. He didn't exactly say you cheated, but he didn't say you didn't. Abby, it sounded like he was taking a victory lap for forgiving you. The room tilted slightly. My fingers gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Are you sure that's what he said? Abby, I swear. He said it in this noble tone, like it was some private pain he overcame to keep the family together. People were actually applauding him. My throat tightened. Thanks for telling me, I managed, though my voice felt far away. After we hung up, I sat there in silence, the TV flickering in the background. My first thought was denial, that Julia had misheard, that Daniel had been misunderstood. But deep down, something ugly and familiar stirred. The way he'd always phrased things just carefully enough to give people ideas without actually lying. The way he'd never corrected the comments that stung me the most. When Daniel came home just after midnight, he smelled faintly of scotch and expensive aftershave. He kissed the top of my head like nothing had happened, then went upstairs to change. I followed him into the bedroom, my heart pounding. How was the dinner? I asked, keeping my voice light. Good. Productive. We might have landed a new client. And the speech? He paused mid-button, a flicker of something crossing his face. What about it? I heard you told people I made a mistake years ago, that we worked through it for Ethan's sake. He turned to me fully, his expression carefully neutral. Is that not true? The words hit like a slap. You know damn well it's not. We had a donor. That was our choice, together. Sure, he said smoothly, but that's not something the whole world needs to know. This way, they respect me. They see me as loyal, forgiving. It helps my image. Your image? My voice cracked. His eyes hardened. Abigail, don't be naive. My career is built on credibility. If the truth got out, that I can't have children, it would invite questions, whispers. People love a perfect story, and I'm giving them one. My breath caught in my throat. So you'd rather let them think I cheated? He shrugged, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. It's not like I came right out and said it. They can believe what they want. And frankly, you've always cared too much about what people think. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My knees threatened to give out, so I sat on the edge of the bed. He walked into the bathroom, humming under his breath, as if he hadn't just burned our marriage to ash. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the years of subtle comments, the sympathetic looks from his colleagues' wives, the way my own mother's tone had shifted after certain conversations with Daniel. He hadn't just lied once. He'd been building this version of our life brick by brick for years, on my back. 2 days later, the lie became undeniable. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Mrs. Hennessy, one of Daniel's oldest clients. She patted my arm and said, "You're so brave, dear. Most women don't get a second chance after, you know." I forced a smile, though my vision blurred. After what? She leaned in conspiratorially. Well, after stepping out on your marriage. But I suppose every man makes mistakes too. It's just nice to see Daniel forgiving yours. I barely made it to the parking lot before my legs gave out. Sitting in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, the shame burned through me like acid. But beneath it, something colder began to take shape. The humiliation wasn't an accident. This wasn't some misunderstood anecdote. Daniel had weaponized the most intimate part of our lives, the thing we had sworn to protect, and twisted it into a narrative where he was the hero and I was the villain. And he'd done it so seamlessly that people I'd known for years were rewriting my history without question. That night, I confronted him again. People think I cheated on you, I said flatly. People think all kinds of things, he replied, without looking up from his laptop. You made them think that. He closed the laptop slowly, met my gaze, and smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile he used in court when he knew he'd cornered a witness. And, what are you going to do about it, Abby? Tell them the truth? Tell them I'm infertile? How do you think that will make me look? How do you think that will make Ethan feel? It was the first time I realized he had me trapped. He knew I wouldn't hurt Ethan, and he was using my love for our son as a shield for his lies. I went to bed with my heart pounding in my ears, staring at the ceiling long after he fell asleep. Every part of me wanted to scream, to tell the world what he'd done. But the risk to Ethan felt too great. And yet, the thought wouldn't go away. What if I could tell the truth in a way that didn't just clear my name, but destroyed his? For 2 weeks, I lived in a fog. I went through the motions, teaching classes, making Ethan's lunches, answering polite small talk from neighbors who now, I knew, thought they were speaking to the wife who was forgiven. Every smile I forced felt like wearing a mask that didn't fit. At night, Daniel came home later and later. Sometimes he smelled faintly of whiskey. Other times, the scent of someone else's perfume clung to him like a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. I didn't ask. He'd already made it clear he held all the cards. The temptation to just walk away came often, especially in the quiet moments after Ethan fell asleep. I imagined packing our things, taking my son, and disappearing into some quiet corner of the world where Daniel's name held no weight. It would be easy, in some ways. I had savings of my own, a teaching position I could transfer, and enough self-respect left to rebuild. But every time I considered it, the same thought slammed into me like cold water. If I walked away, his story would stand forever. Ethan would grow up hearing that his mother had betrayed his father. My friends would always remember me as the woman Daniel mercifully stayed with. And Daniel? He'd keep using my supposed mistake as a talking point, polishing his reputation while dragging mine through the mud. No, leaving would be surrender. One evening, after Ethan was asleep, I stood at the kitchen counter with a cup of tea gone cold, watching Daniel in the living room. He was on a video call with a donor, his voice smooth, his expression confident. He was telling the story again, not outright saying I'd cheated, but dropping the same suggestive phrases, the same perfectly timed pauses, the same noble smile. I realized then, he didn't just believe he'd won. He believed I would never fight back. He thought my love for Ethan, my instinct to protect him, would be enough to keep me silent forever. That belief was my advantage. I started weighing my options. There were the obvious ones: confront him in front of witnesses, threaten to go to the press, but those were reckless. He'd find a way to twist them, to make me look unstable or vindictive. No, I needed something airtight. Something so precise and undeniable that when I struck, it wouldn't just bruise his ego. It would end his career in a single blow. I began to think about the tools I had. Daniel's habit of saving every document for reference. His tendency to record meetings for accuracy. The fact that he'd always underestimated my attention to detail. He'd once told me I wasn't built for strategy, that I was too honest to play in his world. That arrogance was about to become my weapon. I started small. I went through old files on our home computer, careful not to leave traces. I found drafts of speeches, donor letters, and, tucked between legal documents, copies of his medical records, including the one that spelled out his infertility in clinical, undeniable terms. My hands shook as I scanned them to an encrypted folder. Then I remembered something from months earlier. An argument in the kitchen when he'd leaned in close, his voice low and venomous, and said, "If they knew Ethan wasn't mine, they'd see you for what you really are." I'd recorded it without thinking, the habit of a woman who'd been gaslit one too many times. I found the file, listened to his voice again, and realized it wasn't just anger, it was a confession. Piece by piece, I was building a puzzle. The temptation to act right away was strong. But revenge done too soon is just an outburst. I wanted something that would burn his world down while I stood far enough away that no one could see me holding the match. The opportunity came in the form of an email. Daniel had been nominated for Lawyer of the Year by the Chicago Bar Association. The ceremony would be televised. Judges, politicians, donors, everyone who mattered to him would be there. And there would be cameras. It wasn't just a stage. It was a scaffold. From that moment, the decision was made. I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to dismantle the story he'd built, brick by brick, in front of the very people who had believed it. And when it was over, there would be nothing left for him to rebuild. I closed my laptop, sat back, and let the calm settle in. Daniel thought he'd written the final version of our story. He had no idea I was about to edit the ending. Revenge wasn't going to be a swing of the fist. It had to be a scalpel. Quick, precise, and irreversible. In the first few days after deciding, I tried to map it all in my head. What would hit Daniel the hardest? What would make the lie collapse in public, without me ever looking like the one who set it on fire? The ideas came fast, but most died as quickly as they formed. First idea: sue him. I met with an old friend of my mother's, Miriam Klein, a retired litigator with a razor-sharp memory and no patience for niceties. She listened to my story, tapping her pen against a yellow legal pad. "Defamation?" she finally said. "You won't win. He's too careful. He implies without stating. You'd spend years trying to prove the shape of smoke." I remember sitting there, deflated. Miriam leaned forward. "If you want to win, Abigail, you don't sue him. You corner him. You make sure when the truth comes out, the very people he depends on can't spin it away. One move. That's all it takes." Second idea: go to his donors. 2 nights later, I sat at my laptop drafting an email to his biggest political backers. I wrote paragraph after paragraph, carefully worded accusations, bullet points of proof. Then I deleted every word. If I approached them privately, they'd warn him. Men like that didn't care about truth. They cared about protecting their investment. Third idea: anonymous exposé. I even made a burner account and started typing, "My husband, a high-profile Chicago attorney, has been lying to the public about his family." I stopped halfway. Anonymous outrage was too easy to dismiss. He'd claim it was a jealous ex-employee, a political rival. No. I needed the lie to collapse in the exact room he built it for, with every witness that mattered watching in real time. That's when the aha moment came. His nomination for Lawyer of the Year. The ceremony would be televised, packed with judges, politicians, journalists, donors. Not only would they hear the truth, they'd see it. On camera, recorded forever. The stage was set. I just had to load the weapon. Step 1, gather the documents. Daniel was meticulous, almost obsessive about record-keeping. Our home office was lined with labeled banker boxes, file cabinets, and a locked 2-drawer safe. On a Tuesday night when he claimed to be prepping for an arbitration, I slipped inside. The fertility diagnostic was exactly where I thought it would be. In a manila folder marked medical. His name, the clinic's letterhead, the clinical red ink, azoospermia, no viable sperm. There were receipts from the fertility clinic, a signed donor consent form with both our signatures, and even an email from Daniel to the clinic. "Please ensure confidentiality. My professional circumstances require discretion." I scanned every page on my phone, saved them to an encrypted folder, and returned the documents exactly as I found them. Step 2. Secure the voice. Months earlier, during one of our kitchen arguments, I'd recorded him without thinking, just a survival habit from years of subtle gaslighting. In that recording, Daniel's voice was crystal clear. "If they knew Ethan wasn't mine, they'd see you for what you really are. The whore who ruined my name. They don't need the truth. They just need my version." Hearing it again made my skin crawl. But it was perfect. No legal jargon, no careful implication. Just venom in his own words. Step 3. Enlist an ally. I needed someone inside the gala's AV booth. Nate, a technician I'd met years ago through a college alumni event, was my answer. I took him to coffee, slid my phone across the table, and let him listen to the recording. His eyebrows shot up. "You're not asking me to edit anything?" "No," I said. "Just to play it. Exactly as it is." He leaned back, thinking. "The files are clean. I can load them into the slideshow without anyone noticing until it's live. But once it's out there, you can't put it back." I don't want to. Step 4. Keep living like nothing's wrong. While I prepared, Daniel moved through the world as if nothing could touch him. He was photographed at luncheons, gave smug interviews about ethics in the legal profession, and came home bragging about the speech he was writing for the award ceremony. He'd tell me lines from it like he was rehearsing for a Broadway debut. "Listen to this, Abby," he said one night, pacing the living room. "We all face trials in life, but it's our response that defines us. That's good, right?" I smiled faintly. Perfect. He didn't notice the double meaning. By the week of the gala, I had everything. The medical proof, the recorded confession, the tech ally in place, the perfect stage. Daniel thought the ceremony was his coronation. I knew it was going to be his execution. The ballroom glowed under chandeliers the size of small cars. Waiters floated between tables with silver trays, and the air was heavy with money, perfume, and self-importance. Daniel stood at the podium in his tailored tux, basking in applause like it was oxygen. Lawyer of the Year. This was supposed to be his coronation. From my seat 3 rows back, I watched him pour on the charm. His voice was warm, calculated. The same voice that had sold juries on lies and donors on fairy tales. He thanked the Bar Association, his colleagues, and finally, my beautiful wife, Abigail, and our son, Ethan. My pride and joy. The reason I strive for excellence every day. My hand brushed the clutch in my lap. Inside was the trigger, and in the AV booth, Nate was waiting for my signal. Daniel caught my eye briefly, smiled that politician's smile, then turned back to the microphone, launching into a monologue about overcoming challenges with integrity. I gave Nate the smallest nod. The lights dimmed. The screen behind Daniel flickered once, twice, then changed. His headshot vanished, replaced by the crisp header of a medical document. Confidential. Fertility Diagnostic Report. Patient. Daniel R. Whitmore. Result. Azoospermia. No viable sperm count. The sound in the room shifted, polite chatter collapsing into sharp gasps, whispers, and the staccato click of phone cameras. Daniel froze. His hand tightened around the podium, knuckles white. And then his own voice filled the speakers, raw and venomous. "If they knew Ethan wasn't mine, they'd see you for what you really are. The whore who ruined my name. They don't need the truth. They just need my version." The room reacted like a living thing. A collective inhale, heads turning toward me, then back to him. Daniel's jaw twitched. This is a malicious fabrication," he said, forcing a laugh. "Completely false." Nate advanced the next slide. A signed donor consent form, both our signatures, date stamps, then an email from Daniel to the fertility clinic. "Please ensure confidentiality. My professional circumstances require discretion." He opened his mouth, but another recording cut him off. His voice again, calm and smug this time. "You don't correct a rumor like that. You feed it just enough so it works for you." The mayor, seated at the front, lowered his champagne glass without drinking. 2 major donors whispered to each other, faces hardening. Across the room, a judge I recognized from one of Daniel's cases pulled out his phone and began typing furiously. Daniel's smile faltered. "We are here tonight to celebrate—" His phone buzzed on the podium, and then mine did. I didn't have to look to know Miriam had lifted the embargo. News alerts spread like wildfire through the audience. Breaking: ethics complaint filed against prominent attorney Daniel Whitmore, alleging pattern of misleading statements for personal gain. The Bar Association president rose from his table, took a separate microphone, and addressed the room. "Mr. Whitmore, we are temporarily pausing tonight's program pending a review." Daniel turned on him. "You can't—" "We can," the president said, voice like stone. "The board began reviewing concerns 2 weeks ago. Tonight has confirmed their seriousness." The screen shifted again. A scanned page from Daniel's Chicago Civic Leadership Fellowship application appeared. Question 12. List the names and ages of your biological children. His answer: Ethan Whitmore, age 8. Below that, his sworn statement, signed and dated certifying the information was true under penalty of perjury. The reaction this time wasn't loud. It was deadly quiet. The kind of quiet where everyone in the room understands exactly what they're looking at and what it means. Daniel lunged for the clicker. Security moved toward the stage. "This is my private life," he snapped. "You have no right." A voice from the second row cut him off. It was James Ross, managing partner of Daniel's firm. "You signed it, Daniel, and you just lost us half our board." His tone was flat, final. "Consider yourself suspended, indefinitely." Reporters were already moving closer. "Mr. Whitmore," one called out, "did you lie on your fellowship application? Did you fabricate an adultery story for political gain?" Another, "Will you withdraw from consideration for the governor's judicial shortlist?" The last question landed like a sniper's bullet. That shortlist was his not-so-secret dream. His face drained. "No comment," he muttered. And then the final blow hit. Another push alert lit up every phone in the room. Breaking. 2 of Whitmore's largest donors terminate funding. Statement. We were misled. Developing. Governor's office confirms Whitmore removed from judicial shortlist. Daniel's shoulders dropped, the fight gone from his posture. He looked smaller, older, alone. From my seat, I took a slow sip of water. This wasn't just the truth. This was justice, crafted to fit the crime. Public lies, undone in public, with every witness he'd ever wanted on his side watching him fall. The ballroom was a cathedral of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers dripping light across gold-trimmed walls, polished marble floors reflecting the shimmer of gowns and cufflinks. Every detail had been designed to impress. And it was working. At least for everyone except me. From my seat 3 rows back, I watched Daniel stand at the podium, radiating confidence. He looked every bit the lawyer of the year. Tuxedo pressed, hair perfectly combed back, smile measured for the cameras lining the back wall. The award sat on a small table to his left, gleaming under the spotlights. "This honor," he began, "is not mine alone. It belongs to my colleagues, my clients, and my family. My beautiful wife, Abigail, and our son, Ethan. My pride, my joy, my purpose." Every word was calculated, every pause deliberate. He could work a room like no one I'd ever met. Even now, knowing what he'd done, I could see the polish that had carried him so far. The lie was invisible to everyone here, but not for long. My right hand rested on my clutch. Inside was the trigger, and in the AV booth, Nate waited for my signal. He knew the timing had to be perfect. Right when Daniel was at the height of his performance, right when the room was wrapped around his finger, Daniel shifted into the part of his speech about overcoming challenges with integrity. I almost smiled at the irony. I gave Nate the smallest nod. The house lights dimmed, just slightly, as if for dramatic effect. Daniel's headshot, the one that made him look like he belonged on the cover of a law journal, vanished from the projection screen behind him. In its place appeared a medical document. Confidential. Fertility diagnostic report. Patient, Daniel Robert Whitmore. Result, azoospermia, no viable sperm count. A gasp rippled through the audience, sharp and immediate. A donor at the front craned his neck toward the screen. The mayor frowned. One of the judges leaned forward, squinting at the red underlined text. Daniel froze. His smile faltered, and for a moment, I saw the man behind the performance. Tight jaw, rapid breathing, eyes darting between the audience and the screen. And then the audio started. His own voice, captured without his knowledge. "If they knew Ethan wasn't mine, they'd see you for what you really are. The whore who ruined my name. They don't need the truth. They just need my version." It was as if someone had flipped the room upside down. Conversations broke out in low, urgent tones. Phones came up to record. A reporter in the back stepped into the aisle, holding her phone higher for a better angle. Daniel's voice shook. "This is clearly a malicious fabrication." He forced a laugh that died too quickly. "Some kind of ridiculous prank." Nate advanced the next slide. A donor consent form, signed in blue ink by both of us. Date stamped. The clinic's letterhead. Then an email from Daniel to the fertility clinic, projected in massive text for the whole room. Please ensure confidentiality. My professional circumstances require discretion. The whispers grew louder, sharper. Someone near the front muttered, "Oh my God." Before Daniel could recover, the next audio clip rolled. "You don't correct a rumor like that. You feed it just enough so it works for you." I scanned the room. The mayor's posture had shifted, no longer leaning forward with interest, but sitting back, arms crossed. At the donors' table, two men exchanged a look that said more than words. A judge who had once toasted Daniel at our own anniversary party now stared down at his phone, shaking his head. Daniel tried to laugh again, his voice breaking. "We are here tonight to celebrate." His phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times on the podium. Around the room, people checked their own screens. I didn't have to look to know what they were reading. Miriam had timed the embargo down to the second. Breaking. Ethics complaint filed against prominent attorney Daniel Whitmore, alleging pattern of misleading personal representations for professional gain. The murmurs intensified. I caught the Bar Association president glance at the MC. That was my cue, the shift from polite attention to controlled damage. The Bar Association president, a man with silver hair and an unshakable air of authority, stood up. He took a microphone from a nearby table and spoke into it, voice carrying easily over the low chaos. "Mr. Whitmore, in light of this material, we are pausing the program for a private review." Daniel whipped his head toward him. "You can't." "We can," the president replied, tone colder now. "And we will." A ripple of movement passed through the crowd. People subtly angling their chairs away from Daniel, some standing to leave, others pulling out phones for a better shot of his unraveling. The projection changed again, this time to a scanned page from Daniel's Chicago Civic Leadership Fellowship application. Question 12. List the names and ages of your biological children. His answer, Ethan Whitmore, age 8. Below that, in bold, I certify under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. His signature, his handwriting. The gasp this time wasn't scattered, it was unanimous. Everyone in the room understood the weight of that single page. Daniel lunged for the clicker, but Nate had locked the slideshow. "This is private medical information," Daniel barked. "You have no right." A voice from the second row cut through his protest. It was James Ross, the managing partner at his firm. "You signed it, Daniel," Ross said, voice flat. "We've been investigating complaints for weeks. Tonight is confirmation." Daniel blinked, disbelief painted across his face. "Complaints?" Ross didn't flinch. "From associates, clients, donors. You've been using your personal life to manipulate cases and curry favor. We were hoping for a course correction. This," he gestured toward the screen, "is the opposite." Reporters edged closer to the stage. "Mr. Whitmore," one shouted, "did you lie on a sworn civic application?" Another, "Did you manufacture an adultery story for political advantage?" And then the one that hit like a bullet, "Will you withdraw from the governor's judicial shortlist?" That was his dream. The robe, the title, the lifetime appointment. His face drained of color. "No comment," he muttered. Phones buzzed again. More alerts. Breaking. 2 of Whitmore's largest donors suspend contributions, citing serious concerns. Developing. Governor's office confirms Whitmore removed from judicial shortlist. Daniel's eyes darted wildly across the room, looking for someone, anyone, who might still be on his side. But the faces staring back at him were cold, calculating, already rewriting their own versions of the night to exclude him. Nate played the final file. This time, it was a short video clip. Daniel, in a private conversation at a charity event, laughing with another attorney. "Sympathy donors are the easiest money you'll ever get. All you have to do is give them a sob story and a cause they can write a check for." The reaction was immediate. One of his donors stood and left without a word. Another muttered, "Unbelievable," under his breath. The judge at the next table folded his program in half, as if to erase the night entirely. Daniel's phone rang. The caller ID, visible to those in the front, made someone whistle softly, the firm's CFO. He answered in a panic. "I'm dealing with—" He went pale. "Frozen? All of it?" His voice rose. "You can't— No, listen to me." But the call was over. I thought that would be the end. His career gone, his finances collapsing. But Miriam had given me one last gift. The lights shifted again, and on the screen appeared a headline from that very evening's Chicago Herald. Exclusive. Attorney Daniel Whitmore, under investigation for tax evasion. Sources linked to misuse of nonprofit funds. The article scrolled down automatically, highlighting the key lines. Whitmore allegedly diverted over $150,000 from a charitable legal aid fund to personal accounts. Preliminary audit underway. The room erupted, not in shouts, but in that low, dangerous hum that means every single person is already thinking about how to distance themselves. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Security stepped forward. Ross stood. The Bar Association president turned away. The mayor left without a glance. And just like that, the man who had spent years crafting a perfect image stood alone at the podium, his empire collapsing around him in real time. I sat back in my chair, heart steady, face calm. The truth wasn't just out. It had been broadcast, documented, and sealed into the public record. Daniel had always said the right story could make or break a career. Tonight, he learned what happens when the story isn't yours to control anymore. The ballroom emptied like water draining from a sink, fast, swirling, and leaving debris behind. Chairs sat skewed, glasses half full, napkins abandoned mid-meal. The chandeliers still glowed, but their warmth was gone. Daniel stayed frozen at the podium far longer than anyone else. Even the security guards looked at each other, unsure if they should escort him out or leave him to crumble. His face was slack, drained of that magnetic charm he had spent decades perfecting. His tux hung on him like it suddenly belonged to someone else. James Ross approached with the slow, deliberate gait of a man closing a chapter. "You'll clear your desk tomorrow morning," he said, voice low but firm enough for the closest tables to hear. "After that, your building pass won't work." He didn't wait for a response before walking away. One of the donors, the same man who once toasted Daniel at our anniversary party, passed him without a word, slipping a folded check into the jacket pocket of the Bar Association president instead. That, more than the loss of applause, seemed to pierce him. Money walking away is the language Daniel understands best. I rose, collected my clutch, and left the room before he could look for me. There was nothing left to say. By morning, the footage from the gala was everywhere. Headlines competed to see who could frame his downfall with the most sting. Lawyer of the Year, for all the wrong reasons. Whitmore's award night turns into ethics inquiry from bar star to bard. Clips of his own voice, the venom, the arrogance, played on a loop across social media. A 20-second supercut of him smiling at the podium while the fertility report loomed over his shoulder had already hit 1 million views. The Bar Association confirmed an emergency meeting had been scheduled to review his conduct. His law firm issued a terse statement about his administrative leave pending investigation. The governor's office, without ceremony, released a single sentence. Daniel Whitmore has been removed from consideration for the judicial shortlist. Within 72 hours, his donors were gone. Within a week, his largest client announced they were seeking representation aligned with our values. By day 10, the firm's website no longer listed him as a partner. I didn't see him until 2 weeks later. We'd arranged a quick handoff for Ethan at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between my condo and the apartment he'd just rented after leaving the brownstone. He was late. When he finally walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The tailored suits were gone, replaced with a wrinkled button-down. His hair was unkempt, the circles under his eyes a permanent fixture. "Where's Ethan?" I asked. "In the car," he said. "I didn't want him to see us like this." I nodded, glancing out the window toward his car. Like this meant the two of us sitting across from each other with nothing left to fight over except the ashes. "I know it was you," he said finally, his voice flat. I met his gaze. "I know. You destroyed me." I took a slow sip of coffee. "No, Daniel. You did that yourself. I just turned the lights on." He looked down, hands clasped tightly, the tremor in his fingers betraying the calm he was trying to project. "You think you've won?" "I know I have." He didn't argue. In the weeks that followed, the quiet was almost disorienting. No more whispers at social events. No more fake smiles masking contempt. My name was no longer the punchline in someone else's story. I settled into the condo I'd found for Ethan and me. It was smaller than the brownstone, but the air was lighter. Ethan seemed happier too, no longer performing for his father's public image. When we walked by the lake on weekends, he'd chatter about school projects and friends without the shadow of Daniel's expectations pressing on him. For the first time in years, I felt free. It was nearly a month after the gala when Miriam called. "You might want to check the Herald's business section," she said, a smile in her voice. The headline stopped me cold. Whitmore Legal Aid Fund Restored. Under new director, Abigail Kolhman, I read on. Turns out the nonprofit Daniel had once run, the one he'd siphoned donor money from, was still solvent, though barely. After the audit, the board voted to remove him entirely and appoint a new director to repair its reputation. Miriam had quietly nominated me. The article quoted the board chair. "Ms. Kolhman has the integrity and vision to lead this organization back to its mission. We regret the harm caused under previous leadership." I stared at the page for a long moment, the weight of it settling in. Daniel hadn't just lost his career, his reputation, his allies. He'd lost the very platform he had built to polish his image. And now, I was the one standing on it. That night, I drafted my first statement as director. It was short, professional, and focused on rebuilding trust. But the closing line, that was mine. This organization has always been about giving people the chance to reclaim their story. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do exactly that. Some victories are loud, some are surgical, and some, like this one, are both. Thank you for watching until the very end. Stories like this remind us that lies can only hold power if they stay in the dark. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen someone's true colors come out in a way that shocked you? Share your experiences in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Velvet Revenge channel so you don't miss the next twist-filled tale. Until then, stay sharp. And remember, the truth always has a way of coming out.